And we're recording. So, it's Patrick McDonald, and today on the podcast we're talking with Ryan Witten. Filmy. How you doing, Ryan?
Doing great. How are you doing, Patrick?
Doing good. Thanks for coming out on this Sunday right before Christmas. I'm glad you had the time and were available so we could do this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for a view like this, I'll come back anytime, man.
So, yeah, if you are a future guest on the podcast, you're facing out to downtown, and you also get to see the inlet. So just note to all the future podcasters, it's quite a view.
It's worth it. I mean, for the view alone, Patrick is always a good person to hang out with, but the view he's got going on is phenomenal. And we have one of those rare winter days where there's some sunshine, and so the city is just glowing. You can see the range on the other side of the inlet. It's a good day.
It is the perfect day. I feel like I should be outside enjoying it, maybe doing some last minute Christmas shopping or something. But we're here podcasting. No, cool. So yeah, I just wanted to jump into things. Nothing crazy. I've known you for about a year and a half, a little bit less than a year and a half, because I haven't even been here a year and a half. But I think I met you through an event.
Yeah, you rolled into the Growth Space event and just dove right in when you got up here. And that was a collaboration with UAA's Business Enterprise Institute and Alaska Seeds of Change. And you weren't afraid to roll up your sleeves and lend a hand, which was much appreciated.
I was blown away the first time I went into Seeds of Change. The thing that hit me was first the smell alone. I mean, the fragrance is overwhelming. There's just, I don't know what it is, like thyme and I don't know, whatever other spices there are that you have growing in there. And then the other thing that struck me was the purple space. I felt like I was in a Prince video or something.
Yeah, those lights are pretty wild. It's a completely different environment when you're in there when the lights are on because we have those overhead lights and they're just regular white LED lights. And then the Lumigrows have the red and the blue going on. So it is just this purple glow coming out of the rows. And it's fantastic. My buddy Jared was telling me that it's the phosphorus that you're smelling as you walk into the space, but it smells like a garden. And my favorite is the basil and the mint. And if you just walk through the rows and you can just nudge up against the basil plants, and then they're very aromatic. And the mint, you can just shove your face right into the towers, and they smell so good.
I'm smelling it right now, actually. The imagery that you're painting for me, I am transported to the Seeds of Change warehouse in Midtown. Is it Midtown or is it North Star?
I call Midtown. Yeah.
Midtown.
Yeah. That's what I try to own. I mean, the Midtown is such a good neighborhood, and I really appreciate the community that's built up there, and they've been really supportive of us too. So that's been really cool to see.
So, I mean, how did you get into all of this to begin with?
Oh man. I mean, the long version of it, I came up to Alaska following a girl up. That was about 6 years ago.
Oh, no.
That made it about a year and a half, and she decided to hike the Pacific Crest Trail, and I decided to stay up here, and it's just kind of hung around since then. I started working for the parent organization of Alaska Seeds of Change, which is Anchorage Community Mental Health Services. And ACMHS is the largest mental health service provider in the state of Alaska, and during an all-staff meeting, they had somebody say, we're thinking of starting this new program, and it's just in the works, but we're looking at combining supportive employment, vertical hydroponics, and mental health services for transition age youth. And I was blown away. So I was walking through the hallway one day, and I was working maintenance for the organization at the time, and I ran into the chief operations officer, Dr. Michael Sobosinski, and I said, if there's any way that I can be involved, if there's any way that I can help, please let me know. And maybe a year later or so, they said, well, are you still interested? And so we kind of talked about it a little bit more, and then slowly just became more involved and thought they had a lot of the pieces in place already. They had a building, they had the equipment, they had the model. Looking at the Boston Food Services, what is that? The Boston Food Project, I think is the name of the organization.
Sounds good.
Yeah, another youth and agriculture program. And so we took those as models for us, and we thought through what the mission, vision, and values were going to be for the program. And then I helped set up the equipment and started out with 4 youth staff from Alaska Youth Advocates, and it has just grown from there.
I mean, you make it sound like it just happened overnight, but can you walk me through a little bit about just setting up the equipment? Because that, to me, when you walk into space, there's all of these towers, and it seems like this is some kind of new age thing that where do you even start in terms of buying that kind of stuff or thinking about that stuff? Or
Yeah, it was a drawn out process for them. I believe that it was something around 10 years in the making between trying to find the right equipment and trying to line up the funding and find the appropriate parent organization to be the conduit for the funding and to support the mission or the vision of the project. And with hydroponics and with indoor ag, what you're trying to find is what is it that you want to grow and what is it that the community needs, and then building back from there and saying, okay, well, if you want to grow tomatoes, then you need a hothouse and you need Dutch buckets and you need, different styles of growing versus if you want to grow leafy greens. Well, you can do those in towers or you can do them in raised beds. So there's lots of different styles that you can grow, but figuring out what you want and what's the most appropriate or most efficient way to do that. And then budget is always a constraint. Speed costs money. How fast do you want to go? So if you're going to grow with the latest and greatest, well, you better have a budget to make that work. But you don't need that. I mean, it's possible to grow with a couple food safe 5-gallon buckets and some nutrient water that you mix up, and then you just stick a plant in the top of it. We're testing that out right now because the way that we grow at Seeds of Change is probably not the most appropriate way to grow in all of Alaska. But increasing food security and having increased access to food is really important in this state.
I mean, yeah, it's phenomenal to hear, kind of the background of it, and of course the vision that it was 10 years in the making, and then coming to the place where like you had parameters in order to figure out how to set up the space. I mean, right now when I go in, there's a lot of green. I don't see any tomatoes. There aren't any, no.
We've got some cherry tomatoes that we're testing out back in the hydro lab. And so we've got this one Renegade cart that's back there that we're trellising some stuff off of. And there's some cucumbers. I've got a cucumber in my out in the car, actually, that it's some Japanese cucumbers that we're trialing too. So.
I mean, and I'm prying a little bit, but I want to know, like, what is that, the tower? Tell me how you even go about buying one or thinking through, like, putting it somewhere. Because, like, what if I wanted to put a tower in this apartment? Could I do that?
Sure. Yeah, you absolutely could.
Okay.
So that's the system that we're using. It was designed by Bright Agrotech, and it's distributed by ZipGrow Canada. And so ZipGrow has these ZipGrow towers that they design and manufacture and sell. And these towers they have them at different heights. They have a pony tower, which is maybe 4 feet. And then they have an 8-foot tower. And then there is another organization that uses the same tower or a very similar tower, but does it in 100,000 square foot sized warehouse buildings. And they're called Plenty. And Plenty uses about a 15-foot tower. So you can scale it as small or as large as you'd really like to go with it. The other cool thing is with the carts that you can do it with a single tower and a water reservoir, or you can get a half a cart, which would be 8 towers, and you can, maybe you even have 4. You could do a half gutter and just mount it to your wall, and then you have a reservoir and a pump and some lights that you use, and it'll grow food.
Cool.
Yeah.
How much does one of those things cost?
Ooh. I try to forget those numbers.
And I'm curious. I mean, the reason I'm asking is because I see Seeds of Change as like kind of a model of what else could be done. And I know I guess there's a couple other spaces that are doing like indoor growing facilities, but I just want to, give folks an understanding of, you said budget earlier. Like, just want to give folks like an understanding of what that actually means. Are we talking 5,000, 10,000? Because what you have going is I hope it's replicable. I hope that other people can do it too, and you're making that case for that. And so I want to help quell some people's fears in terms of the financial burden or the cost around that.
Yeah. I believe, and you'd have to go check the website to make sure, but I think that they have an educational cart that's something designed to go into a school or a Head Start program that runs around $2,000. And so for $2,000, you can start growing. You can add on some pieces to that. We use something called an IntelliDose, which is an automatic dosing unit for our nutrients, and that runs about $2,000 as well. So that takes away some of the labor, but it's possible to hand mix all of your nutrients, and there are handheld metering units that you can use that are between $100 and $200 for a pH meter and $100 and $200 for an EC meter, or the electrical conductivity, and that tells you the nutrient content of the water.
Cool. I mean, all of this is like you're going into territory that I haven't even been in yet. I'm a white belt in all of this stuff right now. if that, I'm just like, I have my uniform on. I'm just like wanting to learn, but this is great.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I was really impressed with. Before I started growing at Seeds of Change, the extent of my growing experience was our family garden back in northern Michigan, and that was when I was 10. I was pretty young, and I didn't have a great understanding of agriculture, the nutritional requirements for the plants, for fertilizer, and to get them to grow, or lighting requirements, or watering requirements, or any of that. And so a lot of it is pretty foolproof. I mean, honestly, like if I can make it work, then just about anybody can do it. Lots of learning that goes on, but I was able to stumble through it, and not alone, I have to say. Like, it takes a community, it takes a team of people to make it happen, but Alaska is one of those great places where there is a ton of people up here who have a bunch of knowledge and are really excited to share it, and are just trying to help out more people, and that's one of the really cool things about this state.
I was going to say that's a good selling point. Like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. But no, I'm glad that you talked about the community and how you're bringing them in and how it's a collective effort. Like, who are some of the other people that you work with?
Yeah, we have got Brandy Coe, who comes in from the Valley once a week. And Brandy spends 6 hours, 8 hours or so with us. And she has her own, her and her partner have they do buckets, like hanging flower baskets. They do starts for plants. They do a bunch of food product as well. But she grows in high tunnels, and she's just expanding that as well. But this is a way for her to give back a little bit and keep growing stuff in the wintertime too, because it's nice to be around green stuff in the middle of the winter. So Brandy comes in for a bit. Kelly Ballantyne has been working with us for going on a year now. And Kelly came up from Denver, Colorado, and he was working at the Colorado Rescue Mission. And he was working outdoors in field ag with parolees and people who were incarcerated, and was helping them learn how to grow and get their feet underneath them and reconnect to the community. And he came up and brought a ton of ag knowledge with him and a lot of passion too. And he fit right in. So he's been a huge help. We have got Cole Murphy, who's been working with us. Cole is one of our lead greenhouse growers. We've got Sarah Renard, who's another one of our lead greenhouse growers. We've got a team of, 12 youth staff, and then probably another 5 interns that we've been working with from Cook Inlet Tribal Council, from McLaughlin, from Nine Star, from the King Technical High School. They just changed their name, and I always get that acronym mixed up a little bit, but we get some stellar interns from that school.
So you're bringing everybody in, basically.
Trying to, yeah. I mean, and my goal is that the place is run by 16 to 24-year-olds, and my role there essentially is to help them problem solve when something comes up, and to be the interface between the parent organization so that they can focus on running the hydroponics unit, and they've got their own space there.
So you spoke about problem solving. Let's go back a little bit. When we first met at the Grow Space event, it was kind of like this 2-day hackathon and you were working through a program with UAA, I guess the entrepreneur program or something like that. It was being run by Nigel Sharp and company.
Mm-hmm.
And what were we doing then? What we were there to kind of come together to kind of think through what was the future of Seeds of Change, right? So, can you talk a little bit about that time? I guess it was the beginning of the year last year, around January, February, until now, and kind of like that evolution of that.
Yeah. So a coworker of mine, a woman by the name of Sundance Visser, who does phenomenal work. I miss her dearly. If she ever wants to come back, if she's listening out there, Sundance, we miss you. Please come back. Sundance Visser reached out to the Business Enterprise Institute and just asked if they'd be willing to have a cup of coffee and kind of talk through what we were working on at Seeds of Change. And I said, well, we could have a cup of coffee, or you could come down and talk to the whole team. And so she and I went down and we just had a conversation with them of, here we are Seeds of Change. This is where we're at, what we're trying to work on. Here's some of the challenges that we see. And at that point, we didn't really have solutions to try and overcome some of the challenges. It's a beast to run a 10,000 square foot growing facility and work with transition age youth to run and operate the facility. And we, left and right, we were having questions, when we would try and operate the system of, well, what's the best way to mix the nutrients? What's the best nutrient mix for the crop that we're trying to grow? What are the best crops to grow? What is the right product mix for the market? And we weren't getting a lot of answers, just kind of getting a lot of, that's a great question. And, that reflection is, it's always great to hear, but it means that you got to keep digging. And so we were just trying to work through those challenges and figure out, we have the system, we have this vision for the program. How do we make it work? And so we worked with Nigel Sharp and, Nolan and Gretchen and the whole team there at the Business Enterprise Institute.
I mean, where were you at in terms of like the viability of Seeds of Change? Was it kind of a crossroads? Was this? Yeah, you're nodding a little bit. So
yeah. I mean, it was a bit of a crossroads for the program, and this was in the midst of the economic downturn in the state, and the price of oil had dropped out, and it was just kind of a tough time because you have to look at, out of all of the services that can be provided and that our community needs, what is going to be the most useful and what's the most effective way to serve Anchorage.
I mean, I imagine that at this point where you're reaching out to UA, you're like, we need to figure something out right away or else we're not going to survive. We need to, this is do or die.
It certainly had that feeling. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely did. And I think part of that was being in it, and being just so close to Seeds of Change and being so invested in the program and the staff who were there. We saw what a great opportunity it was and how many people we could help with the program, and to be facing the possibility that it might stop, that we wouldn't be able to we wouldn't be able to continue doing that work, is...
It's tough.
It is tough. Yeah. That was a very tough thought to face down.
All right. So you got through it.
Yeah, we did.
You're here now.
We made it.
Yeah.
We made it through it. And so we did a few things through the grow space process. One of them was we had an open house. And so we had, over 75 members of the community who came in and saw the space and saw the potential of what we had there. Out of those 75 people, another 30 from there, right about, joined us for we had a full day workshop, and we kind of separated into work teams and then thought through different ideas of what to do with the space, what to do with the assets that we had within the organization, and kind of re-envision the potential of that. And we came up with 4 primary tracks, focusing on the produce, which we had been doing, but then also looking at the educational component. What sort of workshops, classes, internships could we be doing? Looking at what fundraising potential could be used for the program. And there's one more, sharing the space that we had, because there was other community partners like Kyla Byers and Arctic Harvest who were looking for space to have some cold storage, to do some distribution within the Anchorage area. And we had extra warehouse space, and we weren't using all of it. And so we, to this day, we're still working with Kyla. We're still working that plan that we came up with through the grow space process. That's been really cool to see that come together.
And so where are you going next? That's always okay, so we got through the muck, we got through the mire, and we have funding, we're moving forward, our mission is still intact, we're continuing to employ youth 14 to 24, 26, and we're like, what do you do now? What do you do next?
Yeah, so we spent the majority of the year trying to build out that plan and just keep building out the program and the day-to-day operations. And we're at a place now where Sarah and Cole are essentially running day-to-day operations. And I say Sarah and Cole, but it's Sarah and Cole and the entire team of youth staff that we have. And then we're also working to strengthen the educational component and to make to have it be more formal, so that we have a class structure, so that we have deliverable skills that youth who come through the program can exit with. So that's been really cool to see. And then just trying to strengthen the ties within the community to build some more opportunities to present the workshops and the classes and the knowledge that we're sharing. So that's within Anchorage itself. My goal is for us to be able to continue to share that knowledge around the state. And that's been something that I have just seen over and over again, is that we have lots of resources, we have lots of interest, we have lots of willing people within the state, but it's sharing the knowledge and building the connections.
Yeah, and speaking of sharing the knowledge and building the connections, there was recently like a university class that came through, and you were working with, I guess, some graduate students from Europe.
Yeah, the Danish Royal Academy of Arts, their architecture program, they had some master's students that came through. So out of the Grow Space process, Gabe and Allison of Far North Fungi, they were two supporters of us, and they sat through the workshop and have been working with us as they've been building up their business to share some of our space. And they had one of the ladies, Valerie, from the master's program. Valerie was working on a table that would grow mushrooms within the table itself. And so you could have this in a cafe where you have some food waste that could then be converted into edible mushrooms. And so it's a prototype to build out the idea. And so Valerie met Gabe and Allison, and Gabe and Allison said, well, you should really go talk to Seeds of Change. And so they came and they knocked on the door one day and said, hi, my name's Tiago, my name's Valerie. Gabe and Allison sent us, could we do a quick tour and just kind of see what you guys are all about? And so I said, okay, sure. Yeah. Come on in. So we gave them a real quick tour, and then they explained a little bit more of why they were in town and what they were working on and what they had going on. And Tiago ended up setting up his experiment that he was working on. He had taken permafrost core samples and they were frozen core samples still. And he had them in a contained bit of plastic or, a jar that he was then capturing the CO2 that was released from the core samples and injecting the CO2 into water that was being circulated with lights inside of it. And he had spirulina algae that he had put a small sample of in the water. And so what he was trying to prove out is that it's possible to grow spirulina indoors, and also that the CO2 that is being released from our permafrost as it melts can be used to help encourage growth of our agricultural products. And so his is a small scale test of something that on a large scale, how could encouraging the consideration of how could we be capturing that CO2? Could we be using high tunnels? Could we be using a condenser of some sort to try and gather more of it? But it was a really interesting process to see them come in, explain their concepts, and then with both of them, we got to see their prototypes that they had put together.
And these are architecture students from, you said, the Danish Royal Academy, right?
Yeah.
So they're basically charged with thinking outside the box, like way outside the box. They're coming to Alaska. They're going to extreme climates. They're going to extreme places, and they're taking what we already have and then applying the concept. Am I right in assuming like there's some climate change elements to what Tiago's working on, and then also synthesizing that together with food and food production. And so he's building this prototype, as you said, and making it work in a small scale in Seeds of Change. And so you're kind of acting as a conduit for him to try out these projects. And so basically we're bringing people from all over the world to Anchorage or to Alaska, and you're giving them a platform to try out things that we haven't thought about before, because that we're not in that mind space every day. We're not in that kind of, let's try to mash up things that don't normally think like they would go together.
Yeah. I mean, that's my hope, is that we can get some of those great combinations going. And we were, as I see it, Seeds of Change is kind of a gift to the community. We received grant funding from the Division of Behavioral Health, and we received grant funding from the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority and from numerous other sources. And with that funding, we were able to create this space. And so we kind of have two options. We can either keep it as a closed box, we can keep it isolated, we can run this program in it, and we have some positive impact that is happening. But if you have these resources, if you have this knowledge, if you have this opportunity, why not try and maximize it? Why not try and share that knowledge? Why not try and make connections with other people? Because I don't have all the answers. I know that. The only reason why Seeds of Change is still standing is because we've been able to work with other people from the community who cared and are willing to share and give back. And that's what I'm hoping to be able to help facilitate. I mean, I know that all I can do is act as a conduit, and I'm trying.
Yeah. And you're only in year 2, which is phenomenal to me. It's still blowing my mind. I honestly think that what you're doing with Seeds of Change is the future, not just of growing food in Alaska, but can be can be translated to a global platform. Right? I mean,
yeah.
Think big, go to scale. Like I imagine a bunch of warehouses all around the Arctic and the circumpolar north, growing food year round rather than just during the growing season. And why I think we're so positioned to be able to do that, because we're in such a unique place.
Yeah.
So
the circumpolar north is an excellent space to be in. I mean, it's a little bit daunting to think, we have all this coastal erosion going on. We have with the warming of our ice caps and the water and the atmosphere, that, what is that going to do to reshape the space that we live in? But there's a lot of exciting things that happen with that.
Yeah. And we're a gritty people because we're so isolated, I guess, from the lower 48, as we like to call them, the rest of the United States. We're just kind of left to our own devices here. It's really built into our DNA. And I say I've only been here 18 months, but once you're here and have been through a couple winters, that's how we measure time, right? It's like I've been through a couple. Then it starts to be ingrained into your character, and you start to adopt it into your DNA.
Yeah, it really is surprising to me how much the environment of Alaska shapes the people here, and how much I've felt it shape me. Alaska is one of those places where either you get it and you really like it, or you don't. And if you don't like it, there's a lot of space out there in the lower 48 and the rest of the world for you. You're here because you choose to be here, because you really want to be here. And that is a pretty self-selecting crowd.
Yeah, it's true. When I first got up here, one of the main reasons I came up here was because I was fascinated at this being one of the largest American cities, the furthest north in America. So, and just thinking about how young it was in terms of a city from an urban planning standpoint, it's only 100 plus years old, and just the development that's happened, a lot of the challenges that we have to deal with, in terms of distribution of food and distribution of resources, the earthquakes that we have to deal with, the natural disasters that we have to deal with, which, I used to live in San Francisco, and I was constantly worried about that kind of thing, like earthquakes happening. But I've experienced more earthquakes here than anywhere else, and I think everybody has, well, at least recently.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I came up from northern Michigan, and we don't have any earthquakes there. No. It's not really a concern that anybody has.
I came from Texas. We have like tornadoes and hail and whatnot, so I was okay with that. But
yeah, I don't know. I got inspired when I saw Twister as a little kid. I still want to live through a tornado and see one of those, but I got plenty of time to do that.
I know, yeah. There you go. I think we're still getting over this natural disaster that just happened and kind of shook us all. There was no death, so there's no deaths. And, looking back and reflecting on all of the things that could have gone wrong but didn't, and just thinking about my background as an urbanist, thinking about all the building codes, our reaction as a community, as a government, how we were on top of things, how we were making sure that our community was intact and together, and we were updating them and communicating with them constantly, was really impressive to watch.
Yeah, I think so. The sense that I've got is what we really learned from the '64 earthquake. Our building codes, the work requirements that the structural engineers have put in place, our buildings were stable. Everybody did fairly well. I mean, there are a few buildings that have been hit pretty hard. A few organizations that are really feeling the after effects of the earthquake. But like you said, nobody died. Within a few days, we had all of the roads that had been crumbled were built back up again. It was a really impressive response to see. I mean, Alaska really handled it well.
I mean, and just if you take that and you apply it to the other things that we do, then I think we have a huge advantage. There's a saying, the way you do some things is the way you do everything. And so the way that we handle that, I think we can apply that to a lot of other situations that we're handling now. And so, yeah, just listening to what you're working on at Seeds of Change with the rest of your crew and how you've been able to involve the community and put youth focus on the mission of approaching problem solving for food insecurity, not just here in our state, but globally, is awe-inspiring.
Yeah, thank you. It's been amazing to be a part of. Not something that I ever expected when I came up here, that this would be a part of my life, that I would be working in supportive employment or indoor ag or mental health services, or just never expected that in a million years. But Alaska has been a very kind place to me. I've met amazing people up here. This year I am participating in Leadership Anchorage. And so the Alaska Humanities Forum is putting on this leadership development program, and they're in their 22nd year of it. And as part of Leadership Anchorage, you get to work on a community project. And the community project that I'm working on is the 8 Boxes project. And so Bruce and John are working to put 8 boxes in 8 circumpolar nations. And each one of the boxes, you push a button or you pick up a phone, and that box will ring in the corresponding box in another circumpolar nation. And the boxes themselves as art installations are pretty interesting. That's an intriguing concept, to think that you could talk to somebody in any nation, in any one of the nations at any time. And then thinking through how do you overcome the language barriers? Do you know if you're talking to someone in Russian that are you going to have to speak Russian? Is there going to be some sort of translation that's going to happen? Are you going to have to go grab your cousin who happens to speak Russian and then have them translate for you? There's a lot of interesting thoughts that go through to make that possible. The thing that I get super excited about, though, is how do you coordinate 8 artist teams and 8 sets of business communities and 8 communities to make these installations possible? I mean, how do you take the learning that happens in one place and not try and reinvent the wheel in every space, but instead try and aggregate that? I'm really excited about this thing.
I think you just got to kind of let it happen, right? I think about this as a designer all the time, how to get people to work together and work on a project together. And I'm more of an observer. I like to see how people react or what they're comfortable doing, and then build off of that. So I think it's an interesting and intriguing question. And I'm a huge fan of public art, huge fan of art installations in general. We live downtown, or I live downtown, and the museum's right. I can walk there in 2 blocks, like 5 minutes. So it's a piece of the culture here, and art leads to different ways of thinking, leads to a commentary on culture and a commentary on who we are as a people. And I think that it's very important that that's communicated. And even just listening to the questions that you're already trying to respond to, like language barriers and connecting with other communities, is fascinating to me. I think, and I'm going to kind of want to segue into a little bit about your background. I know that you're kind of an artist as well.
Yeah. I try and keep that a little bit under wraps. My parents gave me the advice that do art as a hobby or as a passion. Don't do it as a career. And I begrudgingly have listened to that. But I try to...
I don't want to... All right, we'll keep it under wraps then. How about that?
So I do a little painting. Oh. That's what I like to do. It's
like President George W. Bush. Like he's a painter. I'm joshing you. Tell me more.
Not George and me.
Touche. Jebbing you. I don't know.
There you go. Get a good jib in there.
Yeah.
So I've been... when I first got up, I worked at an ad agency for about 6 months. I have an advertising background. That's what my bachelor's is in. And I knew I didn't want to work in a big market. I knew that I didn't want to work for corporate America. I wanted to work for something that I actually believed in, that there was a cause to help promote. And so that's, how I ended up with ACMHS and how I ended up with Seeds of Change. And, part of why that's such a good fit for me. But in between, as I was sort of finding my way up here, I worked at Blaine's Art Supply for a year and a half.
Cool.
I loved the place.
Yeah.
Renee Haig, may she rest in peace. She was a beautiful woman to work with. I really appreciate that her husband is still running the show there and is keeping the place going, because it's one of the pillars of the art community. And there's a lot of great artists that came through that I'm still connected with. And one of those people that happens to be Mary Lefevre. And Mary and I took a painting class, an oil painting class with Don Kolstad. And so she and I sat next to each other in class and painted a little bit together, and just kind of talked and drank coffee and BS'd a little bit and became friends. And
can you pull the microphone a little bit closer?
No, sorry.
Yeah.
So Mary and we painted together in Don Kolstad's oil painting class and got to know each other a little bit. And then after the class ended, she said, "Well, do you want to keep painting?" And well, sure. So it took me a little bit to kind of get coaxed into it, because I am the introvert that I am. It's not nearly as apparent now as what it was then. But eventually I agreed and said, yeah, that does sound really nice. And so she and I have been painting together on Sundays for, 4 years now. And we'll get together for 2 to 3 hours. We'll have some coffee. We'll hang out and talk and just sort of paint and talk about our weeks and live our life. And it's a really nice space to decompress. And so the oil painting is a meditation for me, and a way for me to just sit with my thoughts and be present.
It's a good hobby.
Yeah.
And the more you do, the more you have things that are for you and for yourself, and you get to work on them, not out in the open with all of our social media. Not everything has to be out in the open, but when you get to work on stuff on your own, for yourself, and eventually bring it out to the community and public, I think it's a lot more meaningful and valuable. And I think I do that too. I journal like crazy. If we're sharing, I've been journaling for years, and I don't write, I don't publish anything, any blogs or anything. But to me, writing is cathartic, and it's that same kind of thing. It's reflective. I get to sit down and think through something. So that's a hobby of mine, but I don't put it out in the world, because that's for me.
Yeah. That's great. Do you do like creative writing? Do you do like what do you find yourself writing about?
A stream of conscious. I'm an introvert as well, so there's a lot of introspect that goes along with that, and I like to think through things. Writing has become a platform for me to do that. When I was, I don't know, early 20s, I used to bottle it all up and I didn't have anywhere to put it. So I was writing physically, like journaling in notebooks. And then I just started to type it out. And that became just a way for me to put it somewhere. I could get it out of my head. And once I could get it out of my head, I could sleep better.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a public health thing. Like if you're an introvert and you have to think constantly, like put it somewhere. And I just have like folders and of all of my stuff listed by year. So listed by year and month. So I put them in folders and then I'll go back and reflect on them at the end of the year. So yeah, I like writing. It's not I was an English major, so I did a lot of creative writing, and I like stories. My storytelling is I'm constantly trying to improve it and constantly trying to figure out what stories I'm trying to tell. And it's fun to see where they're going every year. I think a lot of the stories happen around the places that I'm in and kind of the situations that I'm dealing with, the people I'm around, which, I mean, is natural. That's how we all, kind of experience life in the world. So, yeah, constantly trying to learn more, trying to figure out what the landscape of the city that I'm in and the community that I'm in and the people that I'm around, what that means in terms of, time and in terms of my relationship to the city. But,
Yeah, it's really interesting how the places that you live shape you and how the people that you surround yourself with shape you and how that can be reflected in your artwork and your writing in your life. And just trying to be mindful of, or at least aware of how that is shaping you. It's an interesting process to go through just to observe it as it's happening.
yeah. I recommend journaling to anybody because like it's all somewhere, and then you can, as a designer, I want to problem solve like what I'm actually experiencing. So coding it and figuring out what the themes are, using that as a way to project forward and how I want to improve things. I'm not so much of a goal setter as I am like looking back at what happened retrospectively and trying to project forward. But yeah, so cool. We're at 42 minutes. I mean, kind of want to give you a chance to, before we run out of time, to any last thoughts, or you want to make any plugs on anything? I know that you're also running too today. You're going down to Seward for the holiday. So
yeah, getting ready to head down there. So it's nice to be able to duck out of town and just kind of step away for a little bit.
Yeah.
Before I come back into it. So hopefully I'll be recharged again when I come back around Tuesday or so. So I'm looking forward to that. That drive going down the inlet is my favorite drive in Alaska. I don't know what it is, but as soon as I hit Potter's Marsh, like I'm in a completely different world, completely different headspace, and it's just like somebody like opened up the pressure relief valve or something. So I really enjoy that.
I enjoy it too. I had some problems like when I first got here, driving and looking at all the scenery and not paying so much attention to the road. So done that run a few times. I agree. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Let's see. A couple plugs. What have I been thinking about lately? I have been thinking about I've been thinking about Green Stand, which is another cool connectivity project. And trying to, these are more just, I'm like spew a couple random thoughts,
Sure.
Then they'll percolate, and maybe the next conversation that we have, then we can bring them back up again. So my buddy Ezra is working on this project called Green Stand.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that you can use your phone to take a picture with their app. You geotag the location of the tree. It gets added to a database, and then you have trees that get planted in Tanzania or Africa or anywhere around the world. They get tagged. And so you know that they're there. And then you can then ask people to go back and check that the tree is still alive. And down the road, as you have funding that gets attached to the pictures of the trees, or somebody makes a donation, then you can say, all right, well, I'm going to pay you a little bit to go plant the tree, but I'm going to pay you more to go back and make sure that the tree actually survives and that it grows to adulthood. And then I think it's around the 2-year mark where the tree starts to become visible on satellite imagery. And so then you can verify in that direction that the reforestation efforts are actually effective.
I would say that's crazy, but I'm not surprised. I mean, it's like, you know, the sharing economy of trees. We're applying the lessons that we learned from Uber and Airbnb to forestry and, you know, nature.
Yeah. So the thing that blows my mind about that project is that it is almost entirely crowdsourced, which I think is just the coolest thing, that we have people who are willing to share their time towards a cause that they think is important. And it's got me thinking about, we have these networks of smallholder farmers in South America and in Africa and throughout the world that share how to grow more effectively, how to take their products to market, how to brand their products. And what does that look like in the North? How do we start getting some of these knowledge networks pulled together? And I haven't quite found that. So maybe that's kind of like my ask to the community is like, if you guys see ways that Alaskans and people in the circumpolar North are working together and you see a way that I can help with that, please let me know, because I think it's really exciting.
Well, I think you're doing a lot of exciting work on your own, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that. How can we help you? Like, how do we get involved in what Seeds of Change is doing and the work that you're doing around food security in Alaska, circumpolar North, and at large?
Yeah. Donate and volunteer. I mean, those are probably the biggest things that you can do. Become engaged in your community. Yeah. That's probably the biggest things. I mean, there's...
How much should we donate?
Oh, man.
I mean...
Yeah. So...
Or what's a good way to donate? How about I put...
Yeah, what's a good way to donate? A good way to donate is through our website. Okay. We've got a PayPal link there. We also have information on how to volunteer and how the steps that you need to take to come in and see the space that we have and to share your time with us. Because we're looking for help with transplanting and seeding and cleaning the system, and in general, just getting more people into the space and sharing their time with the youth staff. It's a great way to be a positive role model in somebody's life. It's a great way to open someone's eyes to the potential that they could have to change the course of their life or take on a different career. Just any sort of engagement that you have, any sort of sharing that can occur during that space is really powerful.
Yeah, I'd like to see how that pans out in 2019. I wonder if we should have some kind of challenge, or, you know, like a donation challenge or some kind of volunteering hours challenge. I'd be down for that. I've come over to Seeds of Change, and I would love to have more opportunities to plug in that would be around like 100 hours for the year or 50 hours, just something that would, you know, motivate me or kind of entice me to go in and then not only just help out, but you know, be an advocate and then also work with the future Alaskans or the future residents of our state and our city.
Yeah. We've got these sweet hoodies that we just had made up, and say if you come in and volunteer with us, I don't know if we've picked the hour cap for that, if you spend 20 hours or 50 hours or where that is, but we've got a few incentives along the way to help encourage that.
I mean, done.
Awesome.
Yeah. Sign me up.
Strengths-based, man. Like whatever it is that you feel like you can come in and really help out with, we would be glad to have you. I know you've come in a few times and shared some of your marketing and social media knowledge with us, which is much appreciated. So that's what it's going to take.
I'm learning too, but I think that that's something that I know I can offer. And if you don't talk about things, then people don't know about them. I always... You know, early on, I learned that if you're doing cool shit, people want to know about it. They want to be able to access it, and they want to be able to access you. And I think the quickest way to do that is through our little media company that's in our pocket, our smartphone. So I try to help as much as I can. So, yeah, 2019, let's set up a challenge. And I'll definitely jump in and expect my hoodie at the end of 100 hours or so.
All right, deal.
Okay. Cool. Well, thanks, Ryan. We're at 50 minutes. We're about to run out of tape here, but it's been a pleasure having you. I really appreciate you coming through Sunday right before you go on holiday for 2018. I wish you all the best in 2019. I know you're going to do great. I'm excited to see where this goes and what happens.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm excited to see all the cool stuff that you're working on, and I'm glad to help out. I mean, that's what it's going to take for this place to work. So that's what makes Anchorage in Alaska exciting, is all the cool people and how we all work together.
Well said.
All right, thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, Ryan.
Sweet.
All right.